Happy to be with you this morning from the Southwest, and good afternoon to you in other time zones. I'm joined here with my colleague, Paul Coseo, and we are happy to present to you today on a project which is so relevant as we in Phoenix and the greater Phoenix area are experiencing one of our first heat advisories for the next 4 days, excuse me. We are upwards of 110 right now in the valley. So an appropriate topic for sure, and happy to be one of your first topics for this summer series. Today, we're coming to you to talk about a specific community of West Mesa, one of the cities in the Metropolitan Phoenix area. And we're going to touch on a community heat action project that is the conclusion of a 2-year grant through the United States Forest Service, through our State Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Paul and I are representing a large planning team of public, private, nonprofit partners and stakeholders here in our valley. So we're really honored to represent them and their work. Neighborhood leaders, not just in our West Mesa community, but all along our river corridor that are addressing heat risk, health challenges due to our climate change in the valley here. I'm going to start with a backdrop of our larger regional initiative, Rio Reimagined. Then we will get into the heat action project with some scientific research and the realities of heat. We'll talk about data, our methodology of the project coordination. We will describe our community engagement, and then we will conclude with the implementation of the tree planting and the results of the entire project. Leading off here is our backdrop of our regional initiative. This is Rio Reimagined. This is our 4-year-old initiative that's based on a concept and projects that were started in the 1960s here in the greater Phoenix area. You can see snapshots of our valley there in the graphics, and to the right, the placement of this project in pretty much the center of Arizona in the Metro Phoenix region. And that gives you just a little bit of geographic context. I'm going to touch on where we are here on this river corridor. The river scope is about 55 miles of the Salt-Gila River that traverses really almost through the center of the Metro Phoenix region. There are 6 cities and 2 tribal nations that are along this river corridor. And the Rio Salado, or also known as the Salt River, really is a tributary of the Gila River, the largest main stem river in this valley. And for many, many years, we want to acknowledge it was a perennial source of life and growth for the indigenous people in this region. That includes the Akimo and the Pipash. These are the ancestors of these modern day nations, the Gila River Indian community and the Salt River Pima American Indian community. You can see them along the corridor here. They are the descendants of these ancestral peoples that were the original inhabitants and the caretakers and the stewards drawing life from this river. The current partnership of Rio Reimagined includes these 2 nations along with 6 cities, a number of public agencies, state, county, federal, private corporations, significant number of nonprofits, academic institutions, and of course, our community-based organizations. We have a diversity of different challenges, priorities, different hydrologies along this river corridor. You can imagine over 55 miles flowing from the east of the valley to the west, significant issues of public access, opportunities for recreation, and strong priorities for environmental restoration of this river corridor. The objectives of Rio Reimagined include an interest in elevating a regional strategy for revitalization along the corridor, leveraging resources from our local community, federal support. So it's a tremendous lift, an ambitious vision at this point. We are in very, very early stages of Rio. As I said, only about 4 years into this current iteration, but we have tremendous progress and traction so far. high-level aspirations of Rio to reconnect this community to the river corridor, to establish a metropolitan vision. Again, I talked about a regional strategy that would be an example of regional collaboration for a very urban environment. Economic growth and inclusion is a significant topic here. We've already seen significant economic opportunity through the Tempe Town Lake development, but we also acknowledge that there are significant threats of gentrification with the revitalization of this corridor. We're looking at that. We are encouraging our leaders to use this as a demonstration of sustainable planning. How do we look at water storage, reuse, harvesting associated with this particular initiative? In 2020, we had a tremendous designation through the Urban Waters Federal Partnership. Many of you may be familiar with this program that is situated at the EPA, but includes 14 different public agencies at the federal level, 28 national nonprofits, and we are the 20th location. It brings funding, resources, technical support, a learning network, and we're working on the designation of a local ambassador to this program that will connect our local projects to the federal support offered through agencies and nonprofits. I bring this slide forward because our land ownership in this river corridor, this project, is very diverse. Significant federal land managers. You can see there, a little bit difficult to see, but it gives you an idea. A number of Department of Interior bureaus own land along the corridor. Of course, U.S. Forest Service. We have state land, county land, municipal land, and a significant number of private landowners. Extraction, mining companies within the corridor. That's a legacy industry for our valley. Diversity of partners within Rio Reimagined just shows you our federal, state, lots of nonprofit organizations, and this is not representative. It's growing all the time. We have bi-monthly partnership meetings for Rio that draw over 100 participants, a very active partnership and growing. So let's dive into our topic for today, which is a specific project within Rio Reimagined, this West Mesa River Community Heat Action Grant, 2-year grant that started in 2020, just concluded at the end of May of this year. I show you to the right there the situation of the city of Mesa, one of our 6 cities for Rio, that's adjacent just to the east side of the city of Phoenix. And the total amount from USFS was $25,000, kind of our seed money here for a shade and natural canopy project. The goal was 100 trees, and this project came through Arizona State University with a strong partnership from a leading nonprofit in our valley, the Arizona Sustainability Alliance. Quick description of the scope of this project. You can see some of the other partners there through their logos on the right-hand side. Maricopa County Public Health was a strong partner in this. Salt River Project, our local energy and water utility. Mesa Public Schools, another strong partner. We started by analyzing data. Paul will touch on that. Dr. Coseo will touch on that in a minute. Where are the heat risks? And the comorbidities associated with heat, health impacts, etc. We wanted to inventory the existing canopy. City of Mesa already has a canopy inventory, wanted to add to that, fill in the gaps. How do we engage the community, prioritize their lived experience in identifying solutions and placement for additional shade? And then how do we utilize a carbon offset program and other funding sources to support the work? Basic goals were to really contribute to an existing and very active heat leadership framework here. How do we create a standard or a community of practice of prioritizing communities' experience as the leaders and experts of heat solutions in our valley? How do we build their capacity and connect their needs to existing processes at the municipal level, at the county, state level, and then how do we link these neighborhoods to other neighborhoods throughout the valley to diversify this coalition, nurture new leaders. Thanks for the background here on the research, the data. One of the project components was to create an app that could be used by citizen scientists, that could be easy enough for kids at the high school level, even middle school level, to utilize to track tree inventory. We looked at 1 square mile, as Paul is describing, to address gaps in the city of Mesa's tree inventory. And we secured volunteers, not only from our planning team, but also from schools and other nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, to walk the neighborhoods and input specific information on tree species throughout this particular 1 square mile. Utilizing cell phones, and this is an ongoing app that's in design, but also in practice. So I'm going to turn it over now to the topic of the most important piece of all of this, which is the community and our engagement techniques, our strategies, our challenges, our materials, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with the implementation. Here's some pictures of our project in action. You can see some of our neighborhood leaders there, grassroots level communication, and an invitation there on the upper right-hand side in November of last year to one of our elected officials' neighborhoods to invite people to talk about their heat experience, their challenges, their ideas for solutions. The tree planting locations were not predetermined within this grant. So our approach was really to get out to meet the community in their neighborhood. We were very aware that this was an at-risk, highly diverse population, lower middle income, really emphasis on low. And we wanted to utilize trusted bilingual outreach leaders. We had an incredible partner in Unlimited Potential, a local nonprofit that is building capacity, education in their work in our community. And we wanted to understand the context of heat and cooling from the experts, residents in these neighborhoods. What is their lived experience? And this was tough work because we were in the middle of the COVID-19 epidemic. We started in early 2020. We just concluded last month. So you can imagine we were certainly cognizant of and prioritizing our respect for the impact of this pandemic on this particular population, the risks. And so we had a significant challenge to our outreach approach, which typically the typical workshops and gatherings certainly were not going to apply in this situation. So some of that challenge was related to COVID, of course. We had to kind of completely redesign our outreach, could not hold meetings, could not hold large gathering events inside. We had to address the cultural acceptance of many of these residents of heat as their norm. We work and live in a very dry, arid climate. It's increasing in temperature, and people say, well, it's always been hot. Well, we've always been sick from the heat. So this is definitely something that we were aware of and needed to address in our educational outreach. Our planting window was restricted. Here in the Valley, we plant in late fall to early spring. And so we needed to kind of work that, of course, into our 2-year plan. We were working with a large rental population in these neighborhoods. And so how do you address the challenges of tree maintenance once you have planted this new natural canopy? And then, of course, there was a major distraction, of course, by COVID and heat related issues. How do we prioritize COVID and yet still implement the goals of this grant? What we did was we looked at other examples, as Paul touched on, in our valley through City of Tempe, City of Phoenix. There's been incredible work on heat mitigation, what worked best with these populations, taking into account all of the COVID restrictions. We came up with ideas that were tried and tested and true: driveway chats, outdoor community events. What are some of the activities that they created, like a Tempe heat walk, where you're walking the neighborhood with leaders, talking as you walk, etc. And we ended up really acknowledging that this worked best. This is a picture of a gathering at one of our community centers where we had families were welcome, lots of kids, food. It was led by one of the trusted leaders of the community. This is Mesavi Perea in the middle there with Chispa, and also Unlimited Potential, and the promentoras, who are trained health leaders in our community, and of course, all messaging in lingual format. One of our efforts was to brand this movement, if you will, to create cooling through a natural canopy. And so this is still a working concept here, but we thought about creating cool islands within these neighborhoods. How do we provide relief from the heat through trees? And how do we empower these communities to come together to improve their health and their well-being by identifying shade solutions, educating and talking about health risks associated with heat, and then really empower these neighborhood leaders to serve as heat champions, to not just work on this particular grant, but expand the work as we move forward, and that's happening even post-grant. Our original goals were to create these public spaces that were cool for all, so access, public sidewalks, parks, public spaces, to make sure all are benefiting or maximizing the benefit here. Talked about the cooling champions, and how do we connect these cool island neighborhoods, this kind of branded concept of a neighborhood that's aware of their heat risk, working together to increase shade, create cooling spots. How do we connect them through a metro coalition of neighborhoods that are working to improve their health? We use social media, Facebook, etc., WhatsApp, bilingual communication to talk about this concept of a cool island, a cool spot within neighborhoods. We connected that to the concept of shade from trees, a street lined with trees, a park with additional trees providing shade, shade from buildings. How do we look at, as Paul mentioned, constructed canopy, and how does that help? Created some hashtags, and again, this is just a start. We're really launching this and hoping to use this in other neighborhoods around the valley as well. I talked about the use of the promentoras, a very critical leadership component of our outreach here. You can see pictures both in person and also online, who were out surveying our residents, our small business owners, on their lived experience with heat. What are their solutions for cooling in their neighborhoods, at their businesses, around their community? City of Mesa was a strong partner. We connected this outreach to the Mesa's already existing investments and plans along streets, in public parks. So we really tried to work within their large investment plans, and that was very successful as well. That's ongoing. We created educational resources in English and Spanish, something as simple as a fact sheet on what it takes to plant a tree, the right tree in the right place. And a lot of times it's of course, as many of you know, not common sense of what it takes to identify the right spot, for the maximum benefit, how to continue to maintain the tree, the very basic planting process, etc. We identified common tree species, Chinese elm, desert willow, red push pistache, to identify for people the type of shade that was available and manage expectations of what we were looking to plant. We had 2 phases of the tree planting. This is phase 1, was done at the end of last year, led by our partner Arizona Sustainability Alliance. And this was partially funded by a significant grant from the Arbor Day Foundation in association with Bank of America. We focused on schools and parks in this initial phase. Again, our community outreach was a more lengthy process at the neighborhood level because of COVID. So this initial phase was structured around the public spaces for these neighborhoods in schools and parks. And you can see 2 examples there of Whitman Elementary and then a City of Mesa Basin Park. These are pictures of the volunteer planting. Our goal was 100 trees in these public spaces. We ended up with 150 trees, 150 shrubs, and milkweed in 3 community gardens at these local schools. Terrific project. Arizona Sustainability Alliance led the way here. An example of a community tree planting invitation. This is in November of last year. We planted 50 trees at Whitman Park. And then we're going to launch into phase 2 here. So we moved out of phase 1, and in the spring of this year, we did our phase 2 project that was really focused on neighborhood private residences and churches. And we engaged support from Arizona State University's Carbon Project. This is an offset program. It provided funding to one of our local nonprofit conservation partners, and had a stipend that was converted based on market value. And the total support from this carbon program was around $25,000. Phase 2, again, here's some pictures of churches, all volunteer-based labor. That again was in spring of this year. Our mobile parks, this was a very significant mobile park area with very little shade. Our volunteers there on the left. Additional pictures of Iglesia Cristiana, El Buen Pastor, Community Church. Additional pictures here of our residential recipients. Tremendous impact here in this West Mesa community. Last slide here, quick by the numbers on the grant impact. I started with our grant amount, generous from Forest Service through our State Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Our total grant value of additional funding, in-kind match, around $100,000. And it was a 2-year grant, original goal of 100 trees, as I've said. And at the bottom there, you can see we ended up with over 300 trees planted. A significant number of community residents, faith-based organizations, social service organizations, over 30 businesses. You can see the schools, the parks, over 160 community volunteers, students. Terrific project. This is it, the last slide. Thank you so much for your interest. We look forward to your questions. Again, want to say that Paul and I and Arizona State University are simply the spokespeople today of a very large, dedicated group of nonprofits, community-based organizations, Maricopa County Public Health, utilities, city, school system, etc. It was an amazing experience, and the work continues. Thanks.